Carnival Personnel was recorded in a dank, moldy basement.
Joe and Jacques, it's Carnival Personnel. Joe and Jacques, to their wives this show is their personal hell. Well, the show sounds the same every single week. Pats are great, Trump is lame, and Joe barely speaks. Who you think still listening?
Who you think still listening?
Besides Jim and Biff, yeah.
And don't forget Richard.
Here's a random review. No one cares about you two, Joe and Jacques.
Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques.
Hello, welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
So, Joe, our guest today, as you know, I've been giddy to have on. I found this gentleman accidentally. Somehow, some of his content came through my Instagram feed, and I started following him. It's all movie-related stuff. I toggle between loving his content and hating it because he does these amazing walks through all these historical sites in Hollywood. And by historical, I mean where some of my favorite movies were shot. And I brought him to Joe's attention because Joe's son revolves around the movie Back to the Future. And this content creator, I'm going to say in half his content thing. Do you think, would you say, Joe, half his videos he's wearing a Back to the Future t-shirt?
Yeah, and in honor of our guest, I'm wearing one of my many Back to the Future t-shirts as well.
We lined the guest up a little while ago. Hey, little fires come up in everybody's life now and then, and you have to rearrange. In his case, it was the huge fires in L.A. There was people, our friend Biff didn't have to evacuate, our other co-host, but he had to pack his bags to get ready. Our guest did too. So anyways, he's a content creator. He's also a TV writer. He's also a director, and he seems like an all-around great guy. So big, huge Carnival Personnel welcome for our new best friend, Jeremy Shipp.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I want to apologize. I just disappeared. We lost power inexplicably. I'm not sure what happened.
Hey, it's like my dad leaving when I was 6. I'll get over it. Anyways, or by like my dad leaving, I'll bring it up in 40 years every day the rest of my life. Perfect
analogy.
So I don't know, Jeremy, which video it is, but I think the first video that I made Joe watch was your "It's a Wonderful Life" video.
I'm sorry, Joe.
Well, it's great. I liked it.
So Joe and I have been doing comedy together forever. And we do this thing where, like, if his wife goes out of town and my wife goes out of town, we'll get together and we'll watch old movies or new movies, but mostly old movies till like 4 or 5 in the morning. We'll watch like 4 hours. Like the last time we got together, it was like 4 hours of the 1976 to 79 Battle of the Network Stars. But the one thing that we really come together on is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, it's classic. Beautiful, beautiful film.
And the 400 podcasts we've had, maybe 6 of them haven't had It's a Wonderful Life reference.
Sure.
It's also the one movie we have made a suicide pact that we will never watch together.
Right.
Yeah. That's for our alone time. Yeah, it is.
But when you found the neighborhood where George goes running down the street, and it was just so wonderful that, because Joe and I have no life, but yet when we find other people with no lives with the same path, I mean, there's no upside.
No life for the best of them. Yeah.
I mean, the time that you must have spent figuring out exactly where the old studio was, where, well, the street goes north and south, but he ran east to west or vice versa. and then you run down that thing, knowing that people are like, what is this guy? Does anybody know this guy running down our street?
That was an intensely awkward day. So just for people who haven't seen, I went down to try to find where exactly was the real estate on planet Earth where Jimmy Stewart ran down the street yelling Merry Christmas to everyone in It's a Wonderful Life. And fortunately, a lot of the research had been done for me by other people with no lives on the internet who had pictures of the old studio that used to be there in Encino. And where, now that's just a modestly pleasant, suburban neighborhood. And so what I had to do was kind of pinpoint where I thought on the old set picture he ran, and I think I had a pretty good idea, and then overlay that with the Google Map view of that Encino village, and try to calculate where exactly he was running. And I think I got it pretty good. But yeah, the awkwardness is that the streets, they didn't keep the old streets. So whereas he was running down the street, I have to run across the street from one house to the other. And yeah, I got a lot of looks from people because, I don't live there. I'm just walking around. And then, yeah, I had to lean the camera against a garbage bin and run across the street. And I put it in slow motion so I could get out of there as quickly as I could.
And where Jimmy Stewart ran in the Bedford Falls set. But exactly where was the set? Looking at this 1953 picture of the RKO movie ranch and combining it with Gary H's comment, Bedford Falls Street is about 6 houses north of Hatteras. Now, unfortunately, the street that George Bailey runs on runs east to west. There's only north to south streets right there. But I can still go 6 houses north of Hatteras and run across the street. My best guess for exactly where he ran this street here, which is just wide enough to put these trees here on Aldea Street, 6 houses north of Hatteras. Here we go. 1, 2.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, George! Merry Christmas, movie house! Merry Christmas, Emporium! Merry Christmas, you wonderful old building and loan!
Merry Christmas.
Yay! Hello, Bedford Falls!
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I think that was the first one. And then I fell down just a rabbit hole because we don't love a lot of the same movies. I'm not a horror guy. The one movie that I have a producer credit on is a horror movie, but when they shot the scary stuff, I literally stood outside, like we shot at people's houses. I'm like, no, I'm going to wait out here. There's no need for me to be anywhere near this stuff.
It's so funny you say that. My wife was in a low budget horror movie. She was an actor in her previous life. And the director didn't like horror either. He wrote it.
Oh.
And so he would hire someone else to direct the horror scenes.
Nope.
I thought, what is going on here?
I had a company for a very long time in Santa Monica, and we did lots of Blu-rays. We did every Blu-ray and DVD for the Universal Music Group umbrella. Mm-hmm. But I landed an account with Lionsgate, and they did distribution for a company called Grindstone, which was straight to video horror movies. I never watched one of them. We had a QC person to do it. My job was taking the head of the account to King's Games. Yeah. And out for drinks. I could not watch any of the titles that we've done, so there's a bunch of, and then, we came back to visit, and one of my wife's friend is a horror buff. Little to, my knowledge that he collects those movies too. And he was like, and I didn't even know, he goes, yeah, I got like 10 movies that say, DVD produced by produced again. I took the guy to the King's Game. That was my entire contribution.
A valid part of producing.
Yeah, that's it. That is it. So let's take a step back. You did not grow up in LA. You are not one of these like Tim Burton people who lived in the shadows of it and just immersed in it. You came from a completely different country called upstate New York.
That's right. Severely rural upstate New York, where for 9 months of the year, you're tripping on frozen mud tracks when it's not snowing. And I was the resident movie geek. I was the guy corralling my friends to make, movies in high school. If there was a project, I would see if I could ask them, ask the teacher, can I make this a movie instead of a paper? And most of the time they said yes. So we'd write a script, we'd get the friends together, we'd film it. And yeah, I had, I was a Spielberg nut. I was and am a Spielberg nut. He was my hero. And I just wanted to follow in his footsteps, which, when I arrived in Los Angeles, I think kind of set me up for some great disappointment. But yeah, it was an obsession from day one. My brother had a Super 8 camera, and he would conscript me to star in his little adventures, and it was just like magic to me being, in front of his camera and not really understanding what are we doing, and then to watch, the product after he'd assembled it, and it was just the illusion was complete. It was a magic trick, and I was hooked.
Is that what got you to college? You go to college, was it a hobby? Was it ever thought, this is a real job and I can do this?
I wanted to be Steven Spielberg, and I don't mean like him. I wanted to actually be like that. I wanted to direct Jaws. I wanted to direct Close Encounters. I thought that if I could just show people all the great movies that I could make, I could have that kind of meteoric rise. But what was holding me back is I was an intense homebody. I didn't want to be too far away from home. I really liked home. So I ended up going to Syracuse. I probably should have gone to, USC or NYU or something like that. Or, the real, many filmmakers just gave film school a complete pass, probably to their advantage. But I didn't really understand that at the time. And I chose Syracuse in part because I enjoyed the school post-tour, and also because I chased a girl. I had a crush on a girl who went there. So it didn't turn out, although I ended up meeting my wife at Syracuse.
Oh.
That was a film school. I don't regret having done it. I'm glad for the people I met. I'm glad to have fumbled around with film. Before you hit record, you talked about how you have never loaded film into a camera, and that is just a terrifying process. Cutting film is terrifying. Cutting negative is terrifying. I'm glad I had that experience. I never want to do it again.
No, and so you graduate. Did you have anything going on that justify you moving west?
Nothing. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, she had graduated 1 year prior and spent the year waiting for me in New York, which was very nice of her, in the city. And when I graduated, we pretty much just packed her 99 Ford Escort with our stuff and drove across the country and landed here in Burbank, which is where we have lived since. So I arrived, to date myself, in August of 2001, ready to find a job. 1 month later, the towers come down, everything changes. The studios, now before then, the studios were much more, when I arrived, literally my first day after cold calling people, I walked onto the Paramount lot to talk to people and interview them. And as soon as 9/11 happened, all of that stopped. The open doors became closed doors. And it was a dry spell trying to find a job in the movie industry. And I think I ended up at a place called Film Tools, which is a expendables store. That's where they sell like gaffer tape and,
Right.
Coffee trolleys and things like that.
Joe, when did you get out there, Joe?
98 or 99? I think 99. Yes, 99.
So I was out there for a couple of years. From day one, was begging Joe to come out because I'm like, this is where it has to happen. Fun about pre-9/11 studios. Because of hockey, I had a good half dozen friends, opening credit sequence credits on all kinds of different shows. And I would just take 2-hour lunches and just go over to Radford. And the thing is, if you pulled up to a gate and you had a manila envelope with a 3/4 tape in it, and you're just like, I'm dropping off a daily. No one ever, before 9/11, getting onto a set. And my buddies would be like, they would be doing a take or they're coming off a set. I'm standing right there and they're like, oh, dude, I didn't know you were coming. I would have called the guard pass. And then they look at me and goes, oh, right, it's you. You know how to get. It was the least secure thing in the world to just be able, not to get into a studio, but to just walk on a soundstage. And all you needed was to have a manila envelope with a 3/4 inch tape.
It was so easy. I won't dwell on it because it's been told ad nauseum, but Spielberg, that's how he started at Universal, just by pretending he belonged there.
Spielberg, yeah, the stories about him, didn't he like just show up for work like every day for like 6 months and people thought he worked at the park?
Yeah, and just because he was there a lot. people thought, well, he must belong here. So the longer he spent there, the more he belonged.
And so Joe knows this, and you know this. How hard is the first year in Los Angeles?
It was very hard. You think about when you want to be making movies, you spend your childhood thinking about how great it will be and how magical and how everyone is just craving your insightful ideas and your creativity. And you get out here and no one cares. Just no one cares about you. And maybe they will let you deliver their coffee if you're lucky. It's a big, slap in the face. I came out and I think I had a rough start because I, as I said, was able to get on the Paramount lot. And I remember thinking, walking through the gate, the magic of this campus spread before me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm already at Paramount. I got this. And I had a very nice meeting with a lady. I remember her name to this day. It was Skates. It's a very particular name. And she said, I just have to practice Excel. That was her advice. And I left and I thought, well, I guess, maybe I'll have better luck at the next studio. And pretty soon after that, yeah, towers came down. No one took my calls. And I ended up working retail for 5 months. And it's hard. It's as you probably have heard, California has a high cost of living. So there's not a lot that you can spend on.
Well, you were out there with your then girlfriend. You guys moved together?
We did.
See, I have the luxury of being able to be a really good surfer. I've never been out in the water, but I went from couch to couch, and and because it was like I had a girlfriend from film school, and it was one of those things where, hey, I'm going to go out there the first year, get kind of settled in, and I think in the first. Yeah, so she moved out there like 9 months later, but in the first 9 months, it was like 3 or 4 different places were kind of my home. And then she had a great job. It was great. She was Tay Leone's assistant on the set of,
wow.
I forget what show on Radford it was. It was a sitcom.
The Naked Truth.
Was it the Naked Truth? Maybe. And she loved her and wanted her to be her assistant. And my then girlfriend, who I'm still really good friends with, was smart enough to say, no, I will be your on-set assistant and still go home and have a life. But she just missed her family and there too much. So she only lasted about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. And then I went back to surfing for
there it is.
another year. And when you're a guy, it's fine. You know what I mean? And so you didn't have that. But I tell people, if you can get through the first year, you'll probably be okay. But
that's right. That's a great piece of advice. And Jacques, I listened to a couple of your episodes just recently.
I apologize.
I recall you saying it was a delight. It was a highlight of my week. I recall you saying that you had set up a number of shows or sold pitches or something like that.
Yeah, we won't get too much into it, but it's a typical story. So,
20 minutes from now, we will get back to another topic. We won't get too much into it.
The first sitcom that I wrote, I did a table read that one of the writers came in on a Saturday, and all my hockey buddies who were all on different shows doing a table read. Dude, only you will get this, Jeremy. We were on goldenrod rewrite pages. Okay.
Yep, a lot of rewrites, a lot of drafts, a lot of passes.
What time did you get in? I'm like, RJ, I got here at 9 a.m. And it's 9 p.m., Jeremy. And I'm thinking, yeah, he gets it. He goes, oh, Jacques, how many hours in a day? I'm like, 24?
Right. Yeah.
So you're working a half day?
Breaking.
And that's what it's like when you move there thinking you're going to be in the industry.
It is just like that. But, I had a point in asking about your your kind of tenure there, because I remember when you were talking about it before, it was almost in the context of, kind of licking your wounds after these near successes. But when I was listening to it, I thought you did an Herculean like job here and out here, like to have sold so many shows, to have thrived for that long a time in one of the most difficult industries. This industry can make you feel like a failure when in fact you are doing so well,
Yes.
doing better than 90% of the people out here.
But so that's why I'm always feeling the pull to go back but the sad thing is, everybody's leaving.
Yes.
It
is, as you know, the industry is always changing. It's always in flux and it's always hard. But it does feel different. I've been out here since 2001 and it does feel different now. There is a kind of pervasive fear, I don't know how else to put it, among industry professionals. It seems we don't know, the companies are tightening the belts. The streaming platforms are not making the profits that they thought they would.
They never have. They've never turned a corner.
No, it's true.
They
thought it would come and it didn't come, the profits.
So here's one of the problems. So I don't want to say this broke me, but a few years ago, so Joe is a godsend. My wife.
Oh, am I here? I'm sorry, guys. I
You're a
didn't mean to be
godsend.
here.
my
Don't
wife.
let me interrupt. Please keep going.
So when you talk about consolidation, so we pitch to Peacock, which is great because pitching to Peacock means you're pitching to USA, you're pitching to NBC, you're pitching to But on the other hand, if one person says no, 6 networks just turned you down.
That's right.
And then we pitched the next meeting was at Netflix. And I'll ask you, because you did a great breakdown. I have it on my list. I wanted to talk to you about your Netflix take. But first, who do you think Netflix considers its biggest competition?
That's a good question. The theatrical model, theaters. It seems like listening to the discourse, they're framing themselves as having saved Hollywood from the outmoded theatrical model. And I would say, Amazon Prime and, Apple TV Plus would seem like the obvious competitors, but they are, to me, like following Netflix's lead.
Also Rands.
Yeah.
Also Rands. That's right.
Netflix considers Netflix its biggest competition.
That was 6 networks at once. I have something I want to say specifically about your drop-off point, but even before that, just listening to your kind of disquisition about your travails here in Hollywood is the Hollywood experience in fast forward.
Yeah.
And it's interesting for those who are interested in trying to make a living here to go back and listen to how Jacques described the trajectory. It is almost like you're improving. This happened, so I said, what about this? And I happen to know this guy. And sure, there's planning involved, but it is almost like a dance. You're dancing with, what about this and what about that? And just trying to pivot with reality and this disappointment happens, so you turn around and you do this. And it's amazing to me that you thrived for so long, and you can kind of hear the mentality that you applied in how you were describing all of that. It's useful.
But now let's get back to so your IMDb page is riddled with stuff that I've watched and liked. Not Flynn, but his name would be Flynn Rider.
Flynn Rider, yeah.
Your spin-off of that, which is great. You've done voiceover, you've done voice work for the past, which is another thing. I mean, the fact that you've done so many of these things, because people spend their entire careers. You can take courses and you can go on auditions just to be a voice person. You've done voice work,
I have done voice work. You're being very generous. Let me explain what happened with the voice work. So after my stint in retail, I joined production at DreamWorks Feature, which means I was the guy running around taking notes, and I was actually using the Excel that Skate recommended I learn. And I was running meetings. I was keeping the artists on track, and it was miserable for me because I wanted to be creative. I wanted to write instead. So it's kind of watching other people do the fun things. The longest movie that I worked on in terms of its duration was Kung Fu Panda. I worked on that movie for 4 years on the front end of the pipeline. So I was managing the editorial department, which then meant I got to go to the recordings. And I can legitimately say that I have acted with Jack Black and Dustin Hoffman and Angelina Jolie because I was often the guy reading lines. They had a professional doing that, but when he was busy, they would ask me to read lines with them. And I did the scratch work, meaning, so animated movies are made iteratively. They assemble the storyboards, and then they don't want to bring in Jack Black and pay him all the money to read the lines for Poe. So they have me come in and I'll read the lines, I'll read the scene, and they'll cut it together and they'll see if the scene works. And if it works and it plays well, then they'll get Jack Black to do it. So I had done so many scratch sessions, and this is not something that SAG looks upon fondly then. And they have, I think, prohibited it now. But at the time, there was a little bit more, it was looser. So they, as a thank you, gave me a line in Kung Fu Panda. So if you watch the movie, Poe has a dream. It's a dream that opens the movie. And he says at one point, his enemies would go blind from overexposure to sheer awesomeness. And there is a gator who says, "He's too awesome." And that is me. Then,
and what is that? And what is that character credited as?
Blind Gator.
Yeah, okay, because he's so
Blind
awesome.
Gator.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens is you get Taft-Hartley, which means you temporarily are advantaged. You get SAG's, perks and the residuals, but really you just have one line, so we're not going to let you into SAG. You really need to do 2 lines. So fast forward, I still did a little bit of work for Kung Fu Panda 2, scratch-wise, and I had a line that was, this is all it is, me going, "Here we go," as Poe. The marketing team cut that line into the trailer for Kung Fu Panda 2, and to this day, if you search the trailer for Kung Fu Panda 2, you will hear a bunch of Jack Black lines, and then someone who's obviously not him saying, "Here we go," right over the falling of the tower. And I don't know what happened. I wasn't in those meetings, but they said, "This is not Jack Black. Can we replace him with Jack Black?" And they recorded Jack Black going, "Here we go." And for whatever reason, the marketing people had just fallen in love with the way that I had said that for that particular moment, and they refused. I don't know if someone was just an asshole and they dug their heels in. They refused. My line ended up in the trailer, and because that was 2 lines in the theater, I had to join SAG for the tune of $3,000 or something, and DreamWorks would not pay that for me. So the producer felt bad for me that I had to now spend $3,000. It wasn't in my control. So she, as hopefully, remuneration for this fee, gave me a second line in Kung Fu Panda 2. So I am also, if you watch that movie, there's a young bunny that goes up to Poe's dad, his adoptive father, who sells noodles, his noodle hut, and the bunny says, "1 dumpling, please. Dragon warrior size." That is also me. So I have 3 lines that you can hear on the internet. I get residuals, and let me tell you, the residuals that I have gotten back in the height of DVD and home release, that has really atrophied now. I got thousands of dollars for those just couple of lines back when the DVDs were flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
Wow.
It has really dwindled, but now I'm in SAG because of that, but that has been the conclusion. That was the beginning and end of my
trilogy.
So far,
right.
So far, we'll fix that.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in, eventually. I'm glad we're talking about you, first of all, Jeremy. That's great that we're getting to that portion of the podcast. But secondly, I'm taking this opportunity to kind of intervene and say, so you're working in animation, doing scratch lines and production, and then eventually that parlays into writing for
That's
animation. Right. How do you make that transition?
I was never intending to write for animation. I always wanted to, write Indiana Jones and horror movies and, Star Wars type things. But it looked so much fun watching people write these crazy, funny things. So I wrote a feature spec, and animated feature spec out of naivete. That's not really something you do. That's not how animated movies get started with feature specs. So it was about a flying squirrel. It was called Night Glider. It's about a flying squirrel raised by tree squirrels, and he doesn't know that he's a flying squirrel. It's, ugly duckling type of story. And it was amusing. It came out well enough, and it won an award at the time. It was called the 2020 Script Contest, where they read 20 pages and they award the best 20 pages. I think it was just lazy people didn't want to read the whole script. And so I had won this award with my little animated spec. So also born of naivete, I threw this accolade into a query letter. I found addresses to all of the agents that I could find in one of those tomes that they used to sell. Here are all the manager and agent contact information. I send out 120 letters saying, hey, I just won an award. Do you want to read my script? And I received 3 yeses, and the rest were either just they didn't respond or no's. And 2 of them were obviously sleazy sharks who were like, I will represent you, but it's 25%. You're not going to find anyone who's going to take less,
25.
which is ridiculous. Yeah. 10% is the agent standard.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the gentlemen was a legitimate animation agent, nicest guy, really liked it. We had a meeting. It was good. And he said, you know what, if you can write more stuff like this, I will represent you. And he did. And true to his word, he sent my material out. And so while I was working on Kung Fu Panda and then eventually a failed DreamWorks movie called Me and My Shadow, I was meeting for, SpongeBob or Fairly Odd Parents. I would pitch stories. Chris Claremont for X-Men, I met, pitched stories and stuff like that. And right when I was starting to feel frustrated and kind of hemmed in by production work at DreamWorks, I had written a spec for 30 Rock. And that one piece of writing got me more jobs and meetings than anything else, really. And that is what got me into the orbit of 2 writers who worked on that 70s show as EPs at one point, Sternin and Ventimiglia. I don't know.
Yes.
So they brought me in to freelance a show that they were running on Nickelodeon called Robot and Monster. And I did 2 of them, and they liked it well enough. And then they were starting up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The 2012, there's been a lot of iterations of that show.
First reboot.
The first reboot is exactly the way to put it. And they freelanced one to me just to kind of test out to see whether they liked my take on it. And they did. And I was the first writer hired. And that was 2 weeks after an executive whom I shall not name at DreamWorks, who told me that you are not a writer. You are destined for production for the rest of your life. I'm sorry, you've got to give up the writing. I was feeling terrible. And then 2 weeks later, I got my first.
That's like when Krusty the Clown he had Bart Simpson. It's like, you kid, you do not have. Hold on, I want to finish this out outside. And then he's the I didn't do it boy.
That's right.
But that must have been, for somebody who I'm sure grew up, I'm guessing, watching the old Ninja Turtles cartoons.
Yes.
Was that something that you were like, this is pretty friggin' awesome? A, I have a steady job, but B, I'm writing something that I maybe have a connection to.
It was stupendous. The feeling of walking into Nickelodeon that first day, where I didn't have to wrangle a schedule, I didn't have to write down someone else's notes. I was showed to an office. It was a temporary office because they were moving things around, but it was still an office. And there was a computer, and my job was then to come up with ideas. In fact, the very, very first day, Josh Sternin, and he knew this was a bullshit request, the executives at Nickelodeon had decided that Cowabunga, which was Michelangelo's, hallowed line from the 80s, was old. And we needed a new Cowabunga. So the very first day, Josh said to me, we need a new catchphrase that will sweep the nation. We don't have any stories for you to work on, but if you could just come up with some ideas. And then he closed the door. So I have a list of, I didn't know how to. I have a list of. I went into the surfer culture. What else did they say?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when did you land on Woozle Wuzzle, and how did that?
You know what that they ended up using was a Booyah Kasha, and that
Oh,
did
wow.
not sweep the nation. I mean, it was an Ali
Mm.
G thing, which came from gangsta culture,
Yeah.
and I believe they eventually just said, fuck it, we'll just go back to cowbunga.
Yes, right. I even fuck it might have passed even better than
That's right.
as a catchphrase.
Oh,
And Booyah Kashan.
you
Yeah.
can have your biggest hero say, this isn't right for you. And you
Right.
have the decision of, well, I respect this person. They've been doing it longer. They must be right. Or, yeah, I'm going to get up off the mat and keep going, which is,
That's right.
it's
and
hard.
no one, and this is the old, William Goldman, no one knows anything, and it is true. The certainty that whiffs around here is fairly thick, but it is all ridiculous. No one has
So
the knowledge.
So your content, and we're just going to get into your content now, finally, 2 hours in. But one of the things you said recently, which was just, and it hit home for me because I'm a soccer guy. If you're going to be writing for animation, you got to write an 11-minute movie. And,
Yeah.
and you equated it to playing on a soccer field, an indoor soccer. And it's a smaller field, and, but it's the same thing. But it is true. I mean, you touch the ball more a lot on a smaller course, so it's a lot more intense. But when you talked about that, you're like, there's nothing different between writing an animation and a Citizen Kane. You have to have a beginning, a middle, and end. A hero has to rise, a hero has to fall. And the way that you put that, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's just such a beautiful analogy. I don't know why you're not writing, courses over at Santa Monica Community College.
Well, I may get there if the jobs dry up. But it's true, and there is an unfortunate, I think, view among many that animation writers are a little bit less than, WGA writers. I'm a dual member. I'm a WGA and TAG Animation Guild member, and I think there is an unfortunate view that the tag writers they're kind of the discount writers because the tag minimums aren't as high as WJ minimums, but it is all writing. I mean, there are certainly, unique parameters with animation, but it's something that anyone can learn, and it's the same muscle, trying to come up with, get the story moving.
Yeah, you're not really you're a writer, but you're not a real writer, type, gatekeeping. So I love the fact that you have got to do so many different things. Now, the reason I found you is your videos. I have to ask, do you plan ahead, or are you going on these hikes where you're like, oh, heck, this happened here. Oh, man, this happened here. Or is there a beautiful mind list in your house where you're like, I got to find where this happened and go do a video about it?
That is a good question. So I post a video a day. And it started because I had directed a little horror short, and it was featured on like a YouTube channel called Amuletto, and they sent out a little packet like, hey, we're going to put your movie on here, and please, talk about it on all your socials. And I had zero social media presence, and I had always wanted to kind of share a few things, but I'm not a good tweeter. I don't really enjoy that.
Are there any good tweeters now anymore? Really?
I don't think so. It's still called Twitter, right?
Oh, I think
pretty sure it's still called Twitter.
Well, you know what? You haven't used any racial slurs the whole time we're talking, so Twitter isn't really your bag, baby.
Fair enough. So I started posting on Instagram these little movies about the short that I had done, and I found that I enjoyed being able to talk about what I wanted to talk about without having to go through the gauntlet of notes. There's just a lot of notes if you make a living as a writer, which is a high class problem to have, by the way. But it was refreshing to me, and then I just started talking about all sorts of movies that I like to talk about. And this is not going to work for your people listening, but since you showed,
yes, please.
You showed your beautiful mind. So this, I do have,
So
I list down all of the ideas that I have. And then this is, I've got a little column I've filmed it, I've cut it, I've put the captions on it, and I've scheduled it. So I've got, my plan was I wanted to challenge myself to keep this up, but not have it damage my day job, because that's where my, obviously I make my money. I'm currently writing for a preschool show, and I really want to do a good job on that show, and I really like my boss. So I didn't want this to damage it, but yet I also wanted to do a video post every day. So the goal is to do 8 every week, which if I do that often enough, I have a cushion. So if a week really goes off the rails and my work turns up, then I can take a week off and it's not a problem. Right now, I'm scheduled 1 month in advance. So it'll be bizarre. If I die right now, I will continue producing videos for about a month. It'll be very strange for people.
Well, please don't die. And now your notebook, I have to ask, if somebody just, comedians' biggest fear is they're going to leave their notebook behind. And not that somebody's going to take their jokes, but if you see a comedian's notebook, it's the ramblings of an insane person. So I'm looking at your notebook. If somebody sees that, can they figure out, do you have a cipher that goes with it? Or does your wife see that and think, who was I married to this whole time?
Oh, it'll be, it will be make no sense to anybody. I mean, if you look at like my brainstorms, it looks like, the serial killer from
you look like you found that under like in like a buried treasure or something.
I know. That's exactly why I got it. It looks like
did a giant rolling ball follow you out of the store that you got that notebook at?
I wish.
Now, when you go and do your videos, when you went to the place where there's that, and it's great, that little train that you found that for a practical set, they had to build this train that's still there. Did you go to that by yourself or did you bring your kids to that too? You're like, oh, I can take my kids on an outing and shoot some content.
Yes, that is exactly how so every week I've got to come up with an idea for 8 things and I've got to shoot 8 things and I've got to cut 8 things. They don't all have to be the same. So yes, I will look to see, where is, as I love, obviously, locations. I like being at places where people have filmed things and done things. So I will think, hey, this is a great place to take the kids. And they've also filmed, blah movie there. I can go away and it usually takes me about 90 seconds to film something, maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes. And then it's done. And then I can go spend time with my family. So yeah, I've systematized it.
Nice. No, it's because I see so much of your content. It's like, yeah, I went to Disney and had a great time. I probably should have brought the kids because
Sure.
Now some of the content that you have, I forward so much of it on. I showed my wife the other day your breakdown of Andy Serkis's audition for Gollum.
Oh yeah.
Now, how far advanced? Did you know about that? Did you come across your audition tape and think, oh, crap, I don't think people know not only if this is how he got the job, but this is how he changed the industry? I mean, how does inspiration strike you with stuff like that?
Well, I kind of follow my own interests, and I've done a lot of Lord of the Rings videos and Spielberg videos, but a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. And that trilogy in particular, I enjoyed it when it came out, but it came out at just the right era for me because I was in college when it came out, and I remember reading a lot about the making of it. And so that era, that kind of late 90s, early 2000s era is very nostalgic for me. And the making of how they came together to make that is endlessly fascinating to me. So I've gone deep on the production, and a lot of little fun nuggets kind of rise to the surface when you do. And among them was Andy Serkis's passion. He's a red hot talent. And it was really kind of edifying to listen to how he showed up for what was supposed to be ostensibly 3 weeks of voice work. But he's such an in the moment guy. He took off his shirt, he got on the chair, and he acted it. And it was because of that incredibly visceral performance that the creators, Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, they said, we've got to be able to get this into the film somehow. And they did, and literally changed cinema.
Because when I watch videos from specifically, I'm like, how did we get here? When you did The Abyss, did you just remember the scene that you was like, oh, I'm going to go do a breakdown of this very specific, when you went into the weeds about the directorial choice of, okay, tragedy happens, they're in this hurricane, but there's this moment of calm That's a
Yep.
false moment of confidence. It's like how or when you do your daily affirmation, when you had a daily affirmation thing from Samuel L. Jackson from the
Huh?
Deep Blue Sea, which to this day, I I don't know if I wet myself when I saw, because I don't like horror films.
That's right.
But that's one that I went to see with my wife. Like she lives in fear of sharks, which is why I named my company Monkey Shark Inc. because she is afraid of monkeys and sharks. If I could have fit clown in there without being too clunky, I would have.
Sure.
But for some reason, she made me go see that movie with her, which when you posted that, I'm like, oh shit, I know where this is.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like a bullshit meme on the Saturdays and Sundays just to give myself a break, because those are easier to throw together. And that was of Samuel L. Jackson's infamous motivational speech from Deep Blue Sea that was ended abruptly by a shark attack. And then with regards to The Abyss, it's just movies that I enjoy. I really like James Cameron movies. I really like The Abyss, and I wanted to kind of share what I thought was cool about this particular sequence. There is a care that James Cameron puts into his action movies and the way he structures his sequences that I wanted to talk about. And Abyss was a pretty good example. That particular sequence where the crane falls and lands on the rig on the bottom of the ocean felt like a cool thing to talk about. So
have you ever got like a warning from YouTube that you're using content?
Yes, I've gotten turned off from YouTube, and I try to keep everything within fair use, but I don't. If I violate it, I'm happy to remove something or just let the algorithm punish me. I post enough that I feel like I'll eventually get back in their good graces.
Because I have a plan that I'm going to roll out in a few months, but I'll post things now and then. And it's funny because we had a guest on, we made a joke about he's probably dug some holes in the desert. And I played like Joe Pesci saying, you don't think I've fucking dug a hole before?
Yeah.
What got flagged was the music playing in the background of that clip,
That's right.
not the clip. And it was like a 3-second clip. You don't think I fucking dug a hole before? That was the whole clip. But somehow the algorithm picked up the 3 seconds of the background music of something else, and I had to pull it down. I'm like, oh, well, because it's
I have no idea how it works, but sometimes a stretch of IP will raise flags, and sometimes it won't. And sometimes if you cut it up a certain way, they let it go through. I don't know.
Another video that I absolutely loved is when you talked about the world building that the writer of King Kong had done, and how deep he went into, things about Skull Island that was never going to be used in the movie, but yet, and it's, have you and any of your writing fallen down the rabbit hole of world building to an absurd point?
Yes, I don't know if you would call it world building. I wrote a script, not a funny one, that is the only script I've gotten onto the blacklist, and it's a very dark Western about the first 2 serial killers in the continent in 1799 Kentucky. They're called the Harps Brothers. And I went down a rabbit. I do like to research, and I did get into the weeds. I had a friend who was able to give me research privileges at Huntington Library, and I had to kind of snap myself out of it, because you kind of get sucked into reading letters and old laws and things like that, and it is, I imagine, similar to the world building, where you start to feel like, well, I am certainly getting knowledgeable, but I don't think I'm actually helping move my project forward. And with regard to King Kong, what impressed me, so it wasn't the writer, it was Richard Taylor. He was creator of the workshop, so he's the guy who would make the sets and the skulls and the props and things like that. And he did an incredibly detailed yet distilled description of what he wanted Skull Island to look like, and it was just enough to help his artists render it, but not too much. It was a good 2-3 pages, and he probably could have gone much deeper, but that seemed to be like a great length of something that where you want to harness your detail, but don't keep at it And that's what struck me about that, was that it was more than you thought, but not more than he needed.
Now, when you write a character, because this was a piece of advice I got. So I have a 16-year-old kid in the thing, and his parents aren't mentioned. And one of the guys who like just was such a mentor goes, "What does his dad do for work?" I'm like, when I was putting together the show Bible for a pitch, and I'm like, I don't know. He goes, "You should know. Like you should know." So the line might not come up here, but a kid who grew up and his father is a mechanic versus his father is a CPA might shape how this kid is in this world or that world. So it was like, it was one of those things where, and now, in writing stand up, it's funny because, one of the rules is, in the rule of three, it's like, A, B, and then the third one has to be the absurd.
Yeah.
And if you land on something that's good, like I have a friend who he does this thing where he pitches reality shows based on some reality shows that he doesn't think should exist. And so he's like, oh, I could come up with some, and each one gets more absurd, but he keeps writing new ones as an exercise. It's like, yeah, the ones he has now really work. But if he sat down and said, I'm going to write 10 more, just slug lines for this reality shows, I might accidentally find one that I really love that works a lot better. So have you done that when you develop your characters? How deep do you go with the show you're on now? I mean, if you have a character and you don't know something about their background, in the back of your mind, do you have like this person's story, their backstory flushed out in your mind before you introduce them? Or do you just, I need a two-dimensional character to say this line and that's good enough?
Well, I have two different answers for you. In my job, it's a writer's room. So if there's a character that we don't know the backstory with, it will be a collaborative process. We will decide together what that backstory is, if it serves the show. And while there is quite a bit of world building on that show, there is also deadlines coming at us hard and fast. So we can't get too far into the weeds. But with regard to my own writing, I will do a fair amount of pre-writing, they call it, which is, it's just writing your treatments and outlines. And sometimes I will do character bios, but I have shied away from them because I find that what happens when I take my outline and I start writing my draft, usually I pull away from the outline. The characters go in a different direction and you just kind of want to follow that. But then your point is apt. Like, what does this character's father do? That is a question that you should probably answer if, when you've written the script, it seems like you should know it. So I try to do a certain amount of setting myself up enough to get me through the first draft, but then it's important. Okay, now that I've seen where it's going to go and I've got to revise it, I need to go back and fill in the spots where we need to fill it in. That makes sense.
No, it does. And so between your day job, between being a dad, between being a husband, between like being a content creator, when you're working on something for Jeremy, your next horror short or whatever, do you write with a cast list in your mind? Like, do you write with do you ever write so the last movie I did, I knew like the dream casting is Bill Murray being this 70s rock star who, had a one-hit wonder that's being covered by a Korean pop band now, so he's kind of coming back into the light.
Yeah.
I wrote everything with Bill Murray's voice in my head. And there was different characters. Like when I started to flush them out, I knew whose voice, I wanted in there. When you create something from scratch, do you have a wish list, or, it's like, somebody like a Nathan Fillion or something like that would be great?
I don't, when I write something from scratch, I don't have a cast member or an actor in mind. And I've heard the advice that it is helpful to have so-and-so character because it begins to inform, their cadences or how they might deliver a line. But there is no right or wrong way to do it. My personal preference is that I write, I see where the characters go, and then upon revision, they start to get into focus. And then I start to think, what would be a great actor to play this part? Now, conversely, when I did the 30 Rock spec and I had all of those wonderful characters in my mind. It made the writing that much easier. So take from that what you will. So it is nice to have those voices in your head and let them kind of talk to you. Much harder to do it from scratch, but yet I have not been compelled to pull an actor and kind of model after them.
And now thanks to AI, a lot of TV writes itself too. So that's kind of the way it's been going. Yeah.
Man, that thing's great. Don't praise the machine.
Oh,
I've messed around with AI, and fortunately right now, all the writing is absolute garbage. Like, it is real terrible. I don't know if that will improve.
Give it a year.
Give it a year.
Yeah, sure.
So now there's a very big personal question for you, Jeremy. You're a dad.
Mm-hmm.
So you are still in it. You are in Burbank, which you cannot throw a rock without, hitting a director, which
not a good way to meet a director, by the way.
Well, that's
it's not helpful.
My favorite line from the movie Barton Fink. It's like, Barton, you can't throw a rock in this town without hitting a writer. And if you throw one, throw it hard.
Yeah, that's right.
But between just going to the grocery store, you're passing a studio, you're passing a theme park, you're passing somebody you just saw on a sitcom. You know what I mean? How are you dealing?
It's true. My wife and I have had a lot of conversations about how much we want to expose the kids to this very peculiar industry, and there is no quicker way to failure than to be a child star.
Yeah.
And have everybody give you everything and watch you become a garbage human real fast. Burbank is a show tunes town. My son is 13 and he is in choir, and it is a very, Burbank is known for their choirs, and it is very very competitive. And but yeah, we do endeavor to keep them grounded. Now I should also add, in full disclosure, for one of the preschool shows that I wrote, my son is cleft affected, and I wrote a character that had a cleft. It was a car show, talking car show. So I gave one of them a cleft hood. Which was the first time, I think that a cleft affected character had been in the animation in that context. And they asked if my son Henry would audition. And I asked him, I said, I tried to explain, do you want to do it? And he said he did. And he auditioned, he got it.
Oh.
So he is a
Nepo baby. Yeah, I got
Nepo
it.
baby.
Yeah. Nepo power.
We deliver him his food and we give him his money. So he became a Disney character, and he had a kind of unrealistic view of what it takes to be an actor, because he did get another audition on the heels of that, and he thought, I'll get that one too, right? He did.
Right. No, that's the heartbreak that.
That's right.
As a dad, it's you. My son a couple of years ago, he did lifeguard. He was trying to become a lifeguard, and he passed the physical thing. He's severely dyslexic, so he had trouble passing the test. And he gave up February vacation, and he was devastated when he came home. I gave up a vacation. I'm a failure. I'm dumb. I'm not good at anything. And he had a little pity party. He calmed down. But they let him take it the next day. They didn't know he had an IEP, so they said, come in. So he studied that night with his mom, and he got it. And this sounds harsh to say, Jeremy, I'm so glad that he failed.
No, I am too. I don't really want that life for him.
No. But the fact that he failed and got up and got it, because kids don't face adversity. But then there's a whole different thing where he didn't pass a test and he got to retake it. When you have these adults saying, you're not good enough to be in our movie. Yeah. You're not cute enough to do this. You're not funny. And that's a different kind. I don't want to shield, because I'm rewatching Titus. And if you've seen the TV show, Stacy Keach's character, it's Joe and I joke about it. It's a cutaway scene where Stacy Keach's, Titus is 3 or 4 and he's going to the light socket with a fork. And his mom goes to stop him. And Stacy Keach is like, And then the lights go off and on, and he looks up and his wife goes, he won't do that again. It's like I've approached parenting with some things like that, but there's another kind of thing where passing a test, not getting a job, pushing carts at Ralph's because they have too many kids or whatever is one thing. That's just how life goes. But when you're go on an audition and somebody tells you you're not good enough for this, and you go on 10 of them, and then you go on 20 of them, it's like plus here's the other thing. I am a child, and as much as I've worked in movies and TV, I love to be amazed. What I love about Disney is when you are in Star Wars land, you are transported. You are somewhere else. Do I know that's not a real Millennium Falcon? Do I know it's not? No, actually, because I cried when I saw it.
Kind of is the real Millennium Falcon.
Right.
I mean, it's at Disney World,
and
it's a fucking Millennium Falcon, and you're in it.
And I love that. I mean, literally, it's so funny because the first time in my boys talk about this, I didn't even realize I was crying. Like Niagara Falls. I was lost because that was and Joe was Joe and I met Henry Winkler last year, and it was the same thing. It's the one time in my life that I've been with Joe, I couldn't talk because he represented everything good that was about my childhood. Yeah. But with the kids, it's one of those things where it's tough because, my wife had gone to the other country for a few months to get established, and me and the boys were in Playa. And in that time, the boys fell down the rabbit hole. So they're 4 and 6 of the show, The Lab Rats.
Yep.
And my wife comes home. She's home one weekend, and it's the first Saturday I can sleep in. And she comes busting into the bedroom. She goes, do you know the show, The Lab Rats the boys are watching? And in my head, my first thought is, why are you in here? I've missed you, but I've also missed sleep. I've been a dad of these 2 kids by myself. And then I'm doing the math of what is wrong with the show. It's Disney XD. It has Hal Sparks, and she loves. And I'm trying to think what her problem is with it, Jeremy. And she's like, it's Chris and Brian's show. Chris and Brian were a writing team on That 70s Show.
Yeah.
And it's their show. She goes, you never read the credits. I don't. I don't. So I text and I say, hey, my boys love the show. And they're like, great, we're shooting Tuesday. Come by. So when I took my 4-year-old, he met the Lab Rats. He didn't meet actors. And had he been in that world, it wouldn't have been so special. So to this day, I now and then look at, he's now 15, and it's like he's talking to the girl. If you know the show, there's one girl who's like the Flash. She has super speed, and he's wearing his, he only lived in superhero outfits. And he's like, I'm really fast like you, Bree. And she's like, let me see, run over there. And first of all, those actors were so amazingly sweet. But the fact that they were able to, up into their early teen, till they're like 10, 11, 12, magic was still magic. You know what I mean? Yep. I wanted them to be kids as long as possible, and it was tough because now we come back and they'll be watching a show and their mom will be like, oh yeah, that guy, you met that guy. He plays hockey with Papa. And it's like, no, I don't. And then she'll show them the pictures of, here you are, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Well, how come you didn't tell us that? Well, because you didn't give a fuck till just now.
That's right. That resonates with me. I want magic to stay magic for them as long as possible. And it's funny you mentioned Star Wars Land. We just went there a week or so ago, and the attention to detail in that particular land is really next level. And what struck me is that when you're standing there, they have constructed it so everywhere you look, you can't see anything but Star Wars Land. The mountains are high enough you can't see any other part of the park. And my daughter, watching it through her eyes, it was really just stunning. And we did the Rise of the Resistance ride, which is an incredible ride. And
oh my God, when you come out of the elevator.
Oh, it's the best.
Because I didn't know. I was spoiler free.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that when you come out of that elevator.
It is truly stunning, the level of detail and attention the engineering team has done. And yeah, just seeing it, watching them watch it is the best. Watching them watch a movie that I love that is really landing for them is the best. And, there is, this kind of hurts to say, but movies seem with kids today less important. The movies aren't as hallowed for this generation, it seems to me, than for when I was young. They are more, it seems to me, interested in a particular YouTuber or a channel about Pokemon or something like that.
No,
So,
the TikToks, the TikTok thing.
The TikToks, the trends,
I mean, because my kids, so they're 17 and 15 now, and Joe's kids are a little older, but they didn't grow up watching an hour drama. And there's only been a couple times when we've been in a movie theater that my kid, he has all the snacks, but he wants to go get something else. And it's not that he wants something else. He just can't sit there and get lost. Just
That's right.
Absolutely lost. And so there's been a couple times when I've gone to movies and my wife has gone to movies, a Marvel movie, and then we'll watch it with them. Like, you saw this last week? Because I didn't want them to ruin it because.
That's right. Yes, I know there
There's
isn't that.
shenanigans.
Yeah, and there's not a second screen. There's not a it's hard to just sit there without taking in something else.
And it is. It's just like, you can, because that's what I love. I love Cars Land too. I mean, the first time I was on the Cars ride and you come around the hill and it's playing that music, and I'm a crier. It's like, it was so magical that you really feel like you're in Radiator Springs.
Yep.
And that's, we've been to theme parks around the world, and that's kind of our family thing. And as much as I hate Disney,
Yes,
they are the worst company on the planet. And just a sidebar, this is why Disney is the worst company in the world. There is such a line of people to work there that they can treat you like shit because 10 people are ready to take that job tomorrow.
Oh,
and
yep.
whether it's working in a kitchen, sweeping, Joe and I also bond over the fact that my dream job, Jeremy, if life was perfect, if I was a billionaire, I would still go to work every day as a skipper captain on the Jungle Cruise. Like, that is my happy place. And Joe
I
loves
understand.
Widow.
I have heard anecdotally that is if you're a Disneyland cast member, that's where you go. You want to be the Jungle Cruise person because you get to hang out on this boat. You get to do your very tightly written set.
It's all different. You have a script, but there are better ones. And Joe lives and dies. Joe's whole world, the Holy Trilogy, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost for Joe is Back to the Future, a Ghostbusters, and Weird Al. And Weird Al has a song. Is it Skipper Dan?
Yes. Yeah, right. He writes a song about being this Juilliard trained actor who had dreams of being in on Broadway and doing Shakespeare, but then he ends up as the cruise director on the Jungle Cruise ride, and he's doing the same act like 48 hours or 48 times a day,
Right.
And it's very dark, but apparently it's not as dark as Weird Al made it to sound, because it seems like that's the plum gig.
Oh, it's the plum gig. I understand they got good parties over there.
But it's just like Joe and I, and my wife especially, just those stupid jokes, those stupid puns. You know what I mean? It's like,
the backside of water.
The backside of water. It is one of my favorite stupid things in the world. But now, without getting too detailed, do your kids go to a regular school, or do they go to a school where everybody in the room is the son or daughter of someone huge?
They go to regular school. They go to Burbank Public School. And, yes, Burbank is enmeshed in the industry, no doubt, but it is, of the industry villages, I guess, slightly more blue collar. So there's more animation workers here. There's more, steady cam operators and art directors and things like that. There aren't as many celebrities here. I think the two celebrities that we see most often are Patton Oswalt and Andy Richter. Two great people to see. But for the most part, you're not seeing George Clooney here. You're not seeing Chris Pine or Julia Roberts or Sabrina Carpenter. They're over the hill, as you say.
No. Because my wife is nanny for somebody whose kid went to one of those schools, and it was ridiculous. It's like that's not a real world, you know. And when we talk about moving back, you know, we did a couple years ago because my son, you know, for a little bit thought he wanted to get into acting. It's like we had a friend who had a guest house we could rent. Hollywood High School has a great theater department.
Yep.
You know, and it's an amazing theater department. But again, you're going to high school. You know, it's one of those things because he was doing well in theater here. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, yes, you know, and I don't want to say he couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, you are little. I mean, touring cast of Wicked that does the secondary markets like Scottsdale is basically the senior class of Hollywood High School and stuff like that. So we're like, you know what? I don't want to set him up for more failure than life is going to throw his way, anyways. No, but I do, Jeremy. You know, I've been wanting to chat with you for a long time. You are a fascinating person who does so many wonderful things. I love your content. I love in your content that you talked about your son's palette and the Jamie Lee Curtis article and stuff like that. You know, it's funny because you know it's you know our son had a couple challenges and what's really funny is the movie Rudolph. Our son was born in September. Christmas is my thing. My wife lives for Halloween. I live for Christmas. So our house year round is Nightmare Before. Like we in our yard right now, we have a 13-foot Jack Skellington that stays up year round.
Hell yeah.
But when I saw Rudolph and Santa comes in and is yelling at his father because his son had a birth defect. Mm-hmm. And like, how dare you? And it's so changed. Like my wife and I are like, okay, we've seen this movie 50 times.
I know.
We never saw how Rudolph has his challenge and he overcomes it. We never paid attention to what an asshole Santa was by yelling at Dasher.
Sure.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Come on, dude.
What?
No, right. Yeah, no, because my dad had a club foot, my brother had it, so he got that from our side of the family. You know, and he had a surgery when he was 6 weeks old, and as you know, the longest when the anesthesiologist comes to talk to you about putting your kid under, it's the conversation I wouldn't wish on Joe. I wouldn't wish that on
Even
Joe.
Joe.
So the fact that you know, because that's one of the problems, you know, people shy away from talking about mental health issues and physical things. You know, you know, to destigmatize it the way you have. You're a good dad, man. You're a good dad.
Well, thank you. And here's the thing that I want my kids to know, and I think it extends to many people who, you know, seek me out for like a little coffee general and kind of pick my brain. And I think sometimes what my kids or these people are looking for is one thing that you can do to succeed. You know, what action can I take that will flip the switch and I'm there, I've arrived. And I just want to, for them, distinguish between, you know, that the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. You know, it's not that you are good at something, it's that you can become good at something by applying yourself. And one of your other guests, I want to say it was Paul D'Angelo, was talking about crowd work and how a comedian that distinguishes themselves by doing that well, that crowd work is a product of not only a lot of practice but preparation. You know, there's a lot of unseen work that goes into something that looks like is just someone doing things off the cuff. I'm sure there are some comedians that just go and wing it and see what happens, but there is an incredible amount of unseen work that goes into the results that you see people doing. The mastery, the YouTuber who is getting 19 million subs, they are actually doing a heck of a lot of work. They're going around, they're coming up with ideas, they're editing, they're filming, you know. So that's kind of the process is what I want to inculcate into my children is a steady amount of work on something that you are enjoying, hopefully at least moderately, will eventually yield results, not becoming something, you know?
No, and you know, it's very funny because when Ted Lasso came out, Ted Lasso is my all-time favorite TV show.
Great show.
Roy Kent is my all-time favorite character, and I love Brett Goldstein beforehand because of his comedy writing, in England before that. But I'm watching it with my son. We loved it. And then there was one of these behind the scene things. And when they talked about, there's a picture behind the bar and it was an homage to the last shot in Cheers and blah, blah, blah. And Cheers and he's George Wentz's nephew. One of my sons was like, well, that sucks. Because he went from loving the show to being mad. He goes, he's a famous person's nephew. It's like, everybody has to know somebody. And he went on this little rant. And then my wife's like, you remember what Papa does, right? You're one of those people, dummy.
Everyone's coming here to do this. And how do you also reframe success? I mean, I think was it Bo Burnham? Someone was talking about how, don't take advice from Taylor Swift. She won the lottery. It's not that she's not working hard. She is. But she got an incredible amount of luck, and she has enough talent to sustain that luck into a meteoric career. But there are many other great songwriters out there who are working hard, and fortune hasn't found them. And you can reframe success. You are doing what you love and working hard at it, and try to find a satisfaction in that. And it's the work ethic part of it.
That's it. That's really all I care about. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And do you understand? You didn't lose a fight because you got knocked down. You only lose a fight when you can't get back up. Content hits me on so many different things. Last question: do you love Back to the Future? Is that why you're always wearing Joe's favorite shirt?
I love Back to the Future. That is one of the movies. There are a few movies, Jaws, Raiders, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, absolutely, that I saw at just the right time. And Back to the Future, I would say, is one of those just perfect movies. I wouldn't change a frame from that movie. I love it.
There's one frame that I would change. It's the part where Marty's in part one starting to fade away and his hand starts to fade and there's
it's a
weird
little
circle. It's like a circle there. Yeah. I was like, that's the one frame I'd change.
Right.
But other than that, yes, I agree. Perfect movie.
Yeah. And that's one of those movies. Every podcast, I'll start to say something, I'll forget where I am, and Joe will say, "You're lying, George. You're lying." So I am so glad that you. And last question. One more thing. That's my
one more thing.
One more thing. Is there an end? Like, is there a goal with this content creation other than delighting my timeline every day?
That is a good question, and I don't know. I am enjoying it for the time being, and we'll see how long that road goes, but I will pull the plug if it feels like it's getting in the way with other things that I want to do. But at the moment, I'm having a good time, and when I start to make my own stuff, as I do every now and then, it's fun to have an outlet to be able to talk about it and stuff like that. But if I decide to hang it up, then I get a couple of hours of my weekend back, and that'll be nice too. So we'll see.
I said the same thing about this podcast, and that was 7 years ago. And, you know what? I forgot to find something else. That's what it was. I made the mistake of just doing this on my free time.
Well, I'm glad you two do. It's nice that you're doing this and talking to people and talking about the craft of it all. It's very valuable to hear.
Joe, do you have? I'm all done, Joe. So you got any last thoughts?
I have no. I want to thank again Jeremy for coming on and indulging us. I wish we could have talked more about your animation writing background. I was really interested in hearing about that, but I had to hear Jacques tell a 20-minute story I'd heard 18 times before. So don't worry about it. Jacques, keep it all in. Don't edit any of it out. It'll be great. The audience will love to hear it a 14th time. But Jeremy, do you want to actually plug your social since we're talking about it?
Oh yeah, you can find me at Winding Path Movies, all one word, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. And I think I'm just Jeremy Shipp on LinkedIn. That's where you want to find me. But yeah, I try to keep up with the comments, and you can message me and respond.
Yeah, and if you're an animation studio that's just hiring writers left and right because you're expanding and not shutting down at all, please feel free to reach out to Jeremy. I'm sure
Please do. Yeah, that would be nice.
Oh man, no, things will get better. I'm sure that the overlords, the tech bros that run the industry now, will only
they only have our best interests at heart. I'm sure.
Exactly. Yes, they only want to make money for everybody. That's really the goal.
Right.
Oh dear, I'm sorry. I don't want to end it on a down note. Let's talk about Back to the Future again. I wasn't a big fan of the animation series. Did you watch the animation series?
Yeah, that wasn't so much.
Although Dan Castellaneta did the voice of
and Joe, how would you rank the 3 Back to the Future movies? Obviously, one is
132. 132.
132.
As I got older, I got more appreciative of Doc's romance in part 3. You know, I find
the same thing happened to me. I think for a long time, I really enjoyed the kind of the hijinks of the second one. But my son loves Westerns, and watching that through his eyes, and yes, the appreciation of Doc's kind of romance, I would now rate it 132 as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're both equally, I think, Mensa level geniuses when it comes to ranking Back to the Future movies.
I am honored that you thought of me and had me on, and were able to talk shop with me for a while. Really appreciate it.
It was great having you on. And Jacques, like I've said before, don't forget.
Coming sweet, sweet fun. Nothing but the quiet you pour. Speaking soft, soft tones. Spoken nods, misguided, misinformed. Will speak. Wasted light. Coming strange, strange friend. For once I found myself without your charm.